When you think of the number one seed team, the team with the most wins in the league, you think of them as one of the best, if not the best team in the sport. You'd think the number one seed team will be full of star players with talent everywhere. They'd be able to beat any opponent in their way and are one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the championship. After all, they won the most games out of everyone. They ought to be capable of beating every team. With that being said, is it possible to have a number one seed be a bad team? Certainly you wouldn't think so. The number one seed team won the most games and therefore should be one of the best in the league. Maybe not the best, but one of the best. An average or below average team would never lead the league in wins, right? Well, it happened. This is the story of the 2007 Arizona Diamondbacks. Before we talk about the 2007 Diamondbacks, we need some context in the history of the team. Arizona won the World Series in just their fourth season of existence in 2001, the fastest an expansion team ever won the World Series. They returned to the playoffs the following year but lost in the first round. After a disappointing third place finish in 2003, Arizona hit rock bottom in 2004, leading all of MLB in losses and going 51 for 111, one of the worst records in the past 60 years. They improved with near identical records in 2005 and 2006, still under 500, but give them some slack, they're in a rebuild. Enter 2007. The Diamondbacks yielded mixed results entering the season. Some people predicted a third place finish, others a first place. Fangraphs predicted a first place finish with 86 wins. Not a lot for a first place team, I might add. The NL West that season wasn't very strong, and the division was up for grabs. How did the 2007 Diamondbacks perform? They came in first place in the NL West, and they had no business being that good. Why don't we take a look at this team? The 2000 Diamondbacks were young and inexperienced to say the least. Their starting lineup was full of young players in their third, second, or even first season. Stephen Drew, Mark Reynolds, Chris Young, Carlos Quentin, Justin Upton, Miguel Montero, Connor Jackson, and others were the young players that made up the D-backs lineup. Micah Owings, Tony Pena, and Yusmeiro Petit were some of the young pitchers that also made up the bullpen and rotation. How did these young, inexperienced players perform? Mixed results. Owings was a decent staple in the rotation, and Pena pitched well out of the bullpen. The batters, on the other hand, were okay at best. Of the batters mentioned earlier, only Reynolds and Jackson recorded an above average season at the plate. In fact, the entire lineup was not that great. 11 players on the Diamondbacks that season recorded at least 200 plate appearances, and 6 of those 11 recorded an adjusted OPS of 100 or higher. 100 is considered an average hitter. Anything above 100 is above average, and anything below 100 is below average. You might be thinking 6 of 11 is good, that's more than half. Yes, that is more than half, but consider the fact that the highest adjusted OPS by a D-backs hitter was 109. 109 is not that high, and that was the best by a D-backs player. They had depth in the lineup, it's just nobody stood out as a real offensive threat. Credit where it's due, Eric Burns had a fine season hitting 20 home runs and stealing 50 bases. Mark Reynolds and Connor Jackson put up decent seasons, but that was about it. Yes, Chris Young did hit 32 home runs and steal 27 bases. Normally a 30-30 season, or near 30-30 season, would be amazing. But also consider the fact that Young had one of the lowest on-base percentages on his team. It brought down his OPS and therefore brought down his adjusted OPS below 100. Not to mention he only recorded .07 WAR that season. Maybe I'm being too hard on Young, as those are impressive home run and stolen base totals, but when you strike out that much and get on base that little at the same time, it's going to hurt your production. Another example, Stephen Drew played in the second most games among all D-backs players and was third in plate appearances. He recorded exactly 0 WAR. In fact, only 2 position players managed to achieve at least 2 WAR. The batting was pretty underwhelming that season. This D-backs offense as a total scored 712 runs during the 2007 season. That ranked 27th out of 30 teams and 14th out of 16 National League teams. That alone probably gives you the best idea on how bad this offense was. Okay, the offense wasn't great, but what about the pitching? The team had a powerful 1-2 punch in Brandon Webb and Randy Johnson. Brandon Webb, perhaps the most underrated starting pitcher ever, won the Cy Young Award in 2006 and finished second in 2007. When you have a bad offense, it helps to have one of the best pitchers. Johnson was putting together good numbers, but went down in June with an injury after 10 starts and missed the rest of the season. Webb held down the rotation, but the rest of the starters were decent to say the least. 7 pitchers started at least 10 games for the D-backs that year, and Webb and Johnson were the only ones with an ERA under 4. With Johnson missing for most of the year, that's not a playoff contending rotation. Starters Micah Owings, Doug Davis, and Livan Hernandez weren't bad per se, some even had good years, but it's very hard to win many ball games if there's only one starter you could safely rely on. Let's just say, Webb is the only pitcher I would trust to start a game if I needed a win. Despite a depleted rotation, the 07 D-backs still ranked 10th among all teams in runs allowed, and 3rd in adjusted ERA. How did they do that? Their bullpen. Led by the MLB leader in saves that season, Jose Valverde, the Arizona bullpen rose to the occasion when the other parts of the team didn't. Their top 5 relievers all recorded ERAs under 3.5 and put up excellent numbers. It was by no means perfect, but they got the job done when needed. The Diamondbacks in 2007 went 32-20 in one-run games. That .615 winning percentage was the highest among all teams in one-run games. When they had a lead, they probably won that game. It is without a doubt the only 2 reasons Arizona sneaked into the playoffs was because of A. Brandon Webb, and B. their bullpen. So what's the point of all this? The D-backs were not that great of a team, but were lucky enough to fight their way to a first place finish in the weak NL West. They're not the worst team ever to win a division. That's correct. They are by no means the worst team to ever win a division by record. With a 90-72 record, that's not uncommon to see for a playoff team. It's not eye-opening, but it's solid. The 2021 Braves only won 88 games and not only won the division, they won the World Series. Here's the thing. Not only did the Diamondbacks have the best record in the NL West with a 90-win season, they had the best record in the entire National League with 90 wins. 90 is solid, but that should not have been the best record for a team in the league. It is not uncommon to see a 90-win team miss the playoffs. It even happened to the Blue Jays and Mariners last season. 90 wins might be enough to get into the playoffs, and if you're lucky, it will be enough to win a division. It by no means should be enough to lead the league in wins. That is the sign of a pathetic league. Not only did the Diamondbacks win 90 games and manage the best record in the National League, they did it with a negative run differential. They allowed more runs than they scored and managed to be the number 1 seed in the NL. That is truly, truly unimaginable. In MLB history, there have been 9 teams to make the playoffs with a negative run differential. 3 occurred in the shortened 2020 season, and another in the strike-shortened 1981 season. Both of those shortened seasons also had expanded playoffs, so I'm not counting those 4. Other than the D-backs in 2007, the other 4 teams were the 2005 Padres, 1997 Giants, 1987 Twins, and 1984 Royals. All 5 of these teams were able to not only make the playoffs, but also won the division. They were lucky and had the benefit of playing in a weak division that season. After all, someone has to come in first place. There's a big difference between the aforementioned 4 teams and the 2007 D-backs. The difference is those 4 teams didn't have the best record in their respective leagues. Take the 1987 Twins for example. Despite a negative run differential, They snuck into the playoffs with an 85-77 record, thanks in part to a weak AL West that season. However, there are four other teams in the American League that had a better record than the Twins. It's just those four teams are all located in the East. The 2007 D-backs were the best among all National League teams, and it makes zero sense. A team that has nothing going for it on offense, with one true reliable starter all season, should not have managed a winning record, let alone the best record in the league. It's absolutely appalling how they managed to become the only team to win 90 games in the NL that season. It was the first time a number one seed team in any league had 90 or fewer wins since 1959, when the first place Dodgers only won 88 games. And since 2007, no team has ever had the number one seed with 90 or fewer wins. And you know something? The 1959 Dodgers is at least explainable. There were no divisions in 1959. It was just whoever came in first place in the NL went to the World Series. If there is a strong competitive league one year, something like this is plausible. The fact that every other team in the NL couldn't overtake the D-backs for the number one seed is unreal. The only other National League team to win 90 games were the Colorado Rockies, and they needed a game 163 just to get there. They couldn't do it in a full season. Honestly, mad respect to the 2007 D-backs. They really should have finished under 500, yet managed the best record in the National League, and even won in the first round of the playoffs against the Cubs. However, they did lose to the Rockies in the League Championship Series. Remember how I mentioned the D-backs had a great bullpen? In the playoffs, the bullpen combined to throw 24 innings and only allow one run. That's a .38 ERA. Props to the bullpen for carrying this team. Before I go, I want to mention one last thing quick. I found an article from April 2007 before the regular season started. It talks about how such few teams, including none in the NL, were predicted to win 90 games. From the article, it reads, "This doesn't mean there won't be a 90-game winner in the NL this year. The real season will be played only once, and it's quite possible that 2 or 3 teams will find a way to reach that threshold. However, our simulation results suggest that no National League team has put together a roster strong enough to make 90-plus wins a sure thing or even a high probability. Charles Wolfson and Tom Tippett, you two are wizards."